Hello everybody, Crazy Logic's here again. We got a little old Rockford, this is what they call, I think, the black and grinds, Rockford Fosgate 150S. And I've been kind of opened this one up, did a little pre-checking, and this one's going to be a good one to show for a couple reasons. It's a little dirty. So we start out, we got B plus and ground. We're gonna put our little discharge resistor and go ahead and discharge. Set our meter to continuity. And bam, it charged up. So next thing we're going to do, and like I said, I've kind of been into this one a little already. I've got a pile of that screws over here already to try to speed this up. Nobody wants to watch me take screws out all day. They want to see how to fix stuff and make it work. It's a little dirty. We'll brush that all out, maybe wipe it out here in a minute. Looks pretty good. So, I'm taking all the screws out except for two to hold the board in. One thing we need to do is our inspection. Of course, this one's got nice terminals, all that. Check all the switches, make sure they're in good shape. Look down the RCAs, make sure there's nothing broken off in there, like I said. Run all the switches back and forth, make sure they're working. I do use deoxit on the switches and the pots, so I'll do that on this pot too. We'll get some in there and help clean it out. So we've checked all that. I want to check and make sure your inductors not got any vibration. Rockford does not on these small amps does not have a bunch of paste or mastic, so we really want to check and make sure those aren't bad. Everything seems good there. Take our multimeter here, and power comes in on these two terminals. This is going to be the power transformer. That means these are the power supply FETs, and these are going to be the rectifiers, and these are going to be the outputs, it looks like. IRF 540, 540s, 540, oh, 90, no, these two are 540s, these are IRF 9540s, so PNP and MPN. So we can touch the back anytime it's metal. That's the same as the center leg, see? So we can touch the back with our probe here if it's metal and check for shorts. That was me. We don't have any shorts. So at this point, I would fire this amp up and do some tests. And so I want to show you something neat with Rockford Fosgate. You can apply only your black ground. Let's see, make sure we get apply just the ground, and we'll swap out my end here for my other one. slips on the Rockford here. Alright. You can apply just those. Power up your power, and we're going to add power to the remote. And we are going to bring up the oscilloscope. We're going to get out our oscilloscope probe. And so this leg and this leg should be the drive. And the neat thing about Rockfords is that you can apply just ground and just remote power, and it will power the TL494 pulse width modulation chip to send the gate drive to these two FETs without putting main power to the board. So I'm going to go ahead and clip my probe on here. Now, when I turn the remote power on here, should see oh, sorry, grabbed the wrong leg. Used to them being out there and over here, not to the side. Wasn't thinking. So we're going to add remote power, and you can watch the oscilloscope and the square waveforms. We can look at this one. That's the drive wave that produces the square wave pulses that goes through the transformer. Raises the voltage. The rectifiers here will rectify it. These filter capacitors smooth it. This is the input filter. And that provides the rail voltage for the output section. So that's why it's real important to have an oscilloscope. And so let's go ahead and clip back on there one time, and we'll give you a real good view of the scope. So here we go. We power it up. Let's go to the scope. And there is the drive signal, and you can see that it's pretty nice and square. So like I said, that's a cool feature. I'll turn the power back off here of Rockford Fosgate amps, is that you can check the power supply drive without having to worry about putting any real power to it. So one thing about Rockfords is they have some of the lines, the Black and Grinds, the I think they call them the George Foreman grills. They all have these tabs, and it's a tab like one of these, and you notice that it's soldered into the board just with two little tabs. Now this one's a little better. It's a little beefier in thickness than. Well, no, it's not. This one's a little bigger. It's a longer version. But one thing to do, some boards you have more room because these are in different places. But these are notorious for getting snapped off. People plug and unplug, and they put so much stress. And like I said, all you got is this little bit of metal actually holding that sucker on. So you can take a chunk of plastic and cut a slot in it with a hacksaw and use it to help make a reinforcing support. Now you'll take that and you'll glue it down with something like this E6000 or shoe goo. E6000 is just the industrial form of shoe goo, but you want to use that, not silicone. Shoe goo and this E6000, if you've ever put silicone on something to like help glue it in place or whatever, and you peeled that back off, you just have to work and work and work to get the silicone back off, and it's just a mess. Well, this is a great adhesive, bonds really good, and if you go to take it off, you can actually peel it off, and it's not such a strong bond that it'll tear up a circuit board. So you can make these little things with a slot any way you need them. Even do, I made a little one offset for this. It's going to go right there, and just give that a little some more support. We'll put a little dab on the bottom and then we'll put a dab up here, and I made sure it was short enough to stay out of the way in case somebody wanted to do this. This is, you know, can't hardly tell that it's there. It's a nice thing to have. It keeps these from getting broke. This amp is, you know, not got its badge, doesn't have its cover plates, it's got a broken peg for its end caps. So it's not like this is going to be necessarily a collector's item. Like I said, if you use the Shugu or the E6000, you can peel it back off and somebody could take that off if they wanted to somehow show this thing off, or if they were real finicky about it not having anything extra. But I always think building these supports out of just some thick plastic makes a big difference. So I'll end up gluing that in place. I just make mine out of, I'm in the middle of building a little desktop 3D printer, and I had a couple of chunks of this thick plastic I bought, and so I got the spares left, and so I've cut the other one up. This is the second one. I've cut the other one mostly up into parts and pieces to help support things and do that. But doing that backup, especially when it's the short little one, and you'll see some of these that are real exposed, that's a good thing to do. So this amp, everything seemed fine. We've checked the drive wave, which we can do in the Rockford without having to apply main power, which is nice. So after I checked and tested all that, I was like, well, it doesn't seem like anything's truly wrong with it. So I went ahead and hooked up power to it, put a signal into it, and hooked up a speaker to it, and I played it, and it played sort of, and it was real gritty and distorted and stuff like that. So I thought, man, it's probably these pots or these switches. So I already deox them, because a lot of times, sometimes if it's one of those, if it's your gain pot, once you clean it and it's no longer oxidized and stuff, everything clears up. Well, that didn't fix this one. So we want to go ahead and go in. We're going to took all the screws out here, all the screws out there, just got the couple in the corner to hold it in. I wanted to be able to kind of walk you guys through, like I said, my process for trying to fix these. And this idea for supporting this is not mine. This came out of a helpful repair guide by a guy named Perry Babin, and he helps guys fix amps. He's got a great website. It is basic car audio electronics, and so it's BACE1.com. Whole bunch of cool info about properly hooking up your amps, properly installing everything, speaker boxes, fixing up your amps, things like that. He even sells a guide on fixing up amps. I do have it. It's helpful. So anyway, I took the board out, and one of the first things I noticed is that the thermal compound, she's old and hard and set up. So we're going to clean that off and get rid of that. But the other big thing I noticed was right here. And we're going to see, pull out the handy dandy magnifier here. Let's see if we can switch views. I mean, this was glaringly obvious when I just did an inspection of the board visually. I didn't have to have my reading glasses on or anything else. But what we have is a blown trace right here, and that copper is gone. And this copper, this is amp set for so long, this copper, you can see it's actually oxidized. Let's go back here. So anyway, we have that blown trace. So I traced it back. It goes back to this point right here. I'm gonna have to see if I can zoom just a little for you. Get us a little closer. sure. There we go. May have to turn the overhead light off. Glare is a little much. There we go. So there's if you follow that trace, it goes back to this little hole here and goes over to a couple little holes here. Well, those are virs, and they go through the circuit board. They're plated, and they make it to where you can go to the trace that's on top of the board. And so if you go to on top of the board, that big hole is right here, and it actually runs over, and it is part of the ground side of these RCAs. So what that means is that the ground part of the signal that's going to travel to these little op amps, which are going to process the signal for the output transistors and allow your gain adjustment and all that. And these are actually going straight to this gain. That's the trace that's blown is going to the gain. So all we're getting is the middle ones, and it's not getting an accurate ground reference for the sound. And so this can happen, and so I looked this all over, all from the sides and everything. And what can cause this is if somebody accidentally touches the battery positive to the outside shield of an RCA. And since I didn't see any burn marks here, it either had to be on their RCA cables. So somebody accidentally, when they had this hooked up, the other end of their RCA touched the battery positive, just flicked it for a second, and that right there was the thinnest part, and it blew. So we know we at least have to repair that. The fact that the amp was trying to function is a good sign, but we at least have to repair this. So we are going to get our glasses out here and rub that a little bit, and rub that a little bit. Make sure she's good and straight. And we're going to rub that oxidation off. And this is just a plastic, kind of a fiber reinforced plastic spudger you get in kits for fixing up phones and tablets and all kinds of electronics nowadays if you've changed a battery. But we're just going to rub that oxidation off. I'm going to get a little bit of acetone. It's getting them all peeled back a little. And then I've got some Cat 5 solid wire. This came out of a network cable. It looks to be about the right diameter. And we're going to go ahead and make us a little piece. To go across there. So we need one about yay big. So there's my little piece of copper. I'll go ahead and leave it sitting right there. Get my soldering iron. A little solder out. Wet it here. That got a little solder on there. We just want to hold it in place. Get a little solder to it. Keep your soldering iron tip clean. careful. I'm very careful. I like how that's turning out. Let's see about sticking a bigger piece across here. A little solder on here. Need to be running my fume extractor, but we're only doing such a little bitty tiny bit. All right. Get my good nips. Nip that off. All right. With our meter still on continuity, we can go to that little bitty hole, and we can go to the other holes. There we go. And we got good continuity. Now we want to inspect it. I'm going to get my eye loop out. Make sure that I did not get into anything else. I'm going to clean it. And then clear nail polish works. Make sure it's mixed up. We're just going to coat that to keep it from oxidizing and keep it from going bad, and we'll let that set. As a protection, because when they make these circuit boards, they coat them in this green board coating anywhere that they don't want a solder pad. So this is solder mask is what they call this. Had this been an amp like a Phoenix Gold or a US Amps, that has a clear plexi bottom that somebody would see, you can actually get 1.4 mil copper foil, trim it to the right size, clean that back, solder that in, and you can buy this conformal green coating. It's a UV cure. You can brush a little tiny on there, and you can disguise that repair so small that that it doesn't show up. That way you won't see that repair like that. In an amp like this that's got covers on it that you can't see, it's not a big deal. We're going to go ahead, fire up the heat gun a little bit, get that to cure, and we're going to do a test real fast, and we're just going to test it at super duper low volume. We'll get a screw, and then I'm going to, if it's fixed, off camera I'll go in and I'll glue this in. I'll clean all that heatsink compound off, reapply new heatsink compound on both sides. These are the ME HSA mesh. I don't know how to say it. It's MEHSA. It's Rockford's. They solder the transistors down on those boards. You gotta have a good, powerful soldering iron and a hot air gun is what I use, or you can use a preheater table, which all you have to have is a cheap flat griddle, Black Friday special at Walmart, to act as a preheater for those boards, or any thermal board that you're wanting to heat up, so that you can apply a quick high heat to take something apart. I'm sure I'll do a video on changing them out, because I'm sure I'll run into an amp that has those in there, and I'll show you my method for it. But let's go on ahead and see about adding a power wire here. We got ground. And we're not going to be feeding it a ton of juice. This is just going to, I like moving those apart. Get this on this side. Get our remote wire in here. And we got left and right. I believe it's got a bridged mode, but we're just going to pick one side to start with. I just want to prove that we should be nice and clean, and that you don't want to touch your battery to your RCAs, because it'll blow up stuff on your circuit board. So this is all my tips. And so there is a little red LED right here. I'll try to hold my finger so we can see that it turns on. See if we can see the glow. No, maybe if I bring it up here, real careful. She comes on. Let's feed a little music to it. And where's my gain control? Screwdriver right here. Let's make sure the gain's not too high. Should be about halfway. Sweet. Let's make that a low pass with no boost. Oh, that's my timer. There, now we're running my subwoofer. Go. Alright. Now it's not distorted. That's a win. I'm going to go back in, clean that all up, and this thing will be, put her back together, and this thing will be ready to play in somebody's car. So like I said, don't touch your RCAs to your battery positive. That's all somebody did to run this amp. I mean, besides the fact that they were hard on it, they've lost the emblem and stuff like that. But this amp is going to be good to go, good to play. Somebody just popped that out, and that was a simple fix. Like I said, I want to point that out to you. Three things we went for. The support for the Rockford style push on, fast on terminal. The neat thing about Rockford being able to use no battery power, and you can look on your oscilloscope and see the drive wave on the power supply side to make sure it's good, and then showed what happens when your RCAs get touched to, your outer shield gets touched to battery positive. This could have, depending on how they had it hooked up, it could have went back up also and burnt it out in their radio, and so their RCAs could have died in their radio. So they only were getting speaker level output. So good lesson to learn. Always disconnect your battery. Remove the fuse to the power that goes to all your amps and stuff before you're hooking and unhooking them and disconnecting them. I hope this helps somebody out. I hope somebody learned something from this. Do all that crazy YouTube stuff that everybody tells you about. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Put some comments in. See, ask some questions. I'll see if I can't get an amp that will cover something to teach something. Not all of them do. Some of them are straight up, but I've got a bunch recorded. I just got to get better at video editing software and stuff so that I can get these up and published, because I'm having some issues with that. I've never done it before. So, like I said, thanks a bunch. Hope you learned something, and see you next time.